Welcome back to Albert TV Movie Recaps. Today I will be recapping a blockbuster drama film from 2011 titled The Intouchables. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. One late night in Paris, Driss, an ex-con, was driving his employer Philippe, a quadriplegic millionaire, through the city. While he waits for the traffic light to turn green, he got too bored and drives through. Driss breaks the speed limit and begins driving quite fast, dodging other cars and not caring about traffic signs and law. This causes the law enforcement to go after him, and Driss bets €100 that he can lose them, but after driving under an overpass bridge, the cops catch up by ambushing them from both sides. Driss doesn't look too worried though, and this time, he bets €200 that he will use them as escort. The cops made him leave the car and he starts acting, then behaving offendedly and telling them his boss can't move and he was rushing him to the hospital. The officers find proof of this when they find the wheelchair in the car, and when approaching Philippe, they see him convulsing, which was also an act. Seeing it as an emergency, the cops forgive Driss for breaking the speed limit and the law, and the cops offer themselves as escorts to the hospital. To celebrate winning the bet, Driss plays September by Earth on their way. When they arrive at their destination, he shares a smoke with Philippe as soon as the cops were gone. Driss promises he'll handle it and drives them away just before the hospital staff could find them. This friendship begins many months ago, when Philippe and his assistant Magali were holding interviews to find a new caretaker for the quadriplegic millionaire, but it wasn't going too well, because all the applicants were having awkward answers to their interview questions. But they are suddenly surprised when Driss storms in, ignoring the fact that it wasn't his turn yet, because he only wants some papers to be signed, thinking they won't hire him, so he can get the unemployment benefits. He's blunt and a little offensive, even hitting on Magali, but Philippe finds him very funny and asks him to come back the next day for his signed papers. Driss returned back to his home, in a humble neighborhood, and tries to take a bath while all his little siblings inconvenience him, but managed to get it done in time, thanks to his sister Mina, who is a bit older than the others and more responsible. While waiting for their mom to arrive, he looks through the window and notices his brother, Adama, getting out of a distrustful car. When the boy enters the apartment, he says he was at school and returns again after grabbing his bag, causing Driss to be even more suspicious that he was up to something. In the evening, his mom arrives, and he gives her a Faberge egg he stole and tells her he has been away on vacation when she asked. She isn't happy to see him though, because he disappeared for 6 months and never called, and now he has shown up, out of nowhere, as if her home was a hotel. As she's absolutely done with all his lies and she has other children she has to take care of. She kicked him out and tells him not to come back. Driss spends the night having a smoke and some snacks with some neighborhood friends. The next day, Driss goes back to Philippe's the quadriplegic millionaire house for his papers, and is received by the housekeeper Miss Yvonne, who shows him around the house and tells him about Philippe's daily routines. She also shows him the room he would get for himself with his own bathroom. Driss can't help staring at the bathtub before he's dragged to see Philippe, who offers the signed sheet of paper and also a job opportunity. Driss accepts the 1-month trial, and Philippe tells him he bets he won't last 2 weeks. After bringing his things to his room, Driss is taught how to take care of Philippe. He must learn how to keep his legs stimulated, how to put him in the wheelchair, how to help him shower and change his clothes. Things get awkward when Driss discovers he must put on him some high stockings and even clean his butt after Philippe uses the bathroom, but no matter how much he complains and says he won't do those chores, he ends up accepting them as part of his job. Later in the evening, while he's enjoying a snack on the roof, he's interrupted by Philippe's daughter, Eliza, and her boyfriend, Bastien, who are looking for a private place to make out, and he kicks them both out after refusing to share his beer. Driss quickly gets used to the daily schedule with Philippe, even if at first he does make some mistakes he learns from, like handing the phone to Philippe instead of putting it on his ear or forgetting the baby monitor while having a bath. He also learns to organize his mail in different folders, most of the letters he opens for Philippe, but there's a series of private ones he isn't allowed to look at. When he finds a flyer promoting female escorts, he decides to start a file just for those instead of throwing them in the trash as Philippe says. Driss still makes sure to have a good time. He keeps trying to hit on Magali to no avail, and sometimes calls escorts to join him in bed. One morning, after Yvonne comes to his room to scold him for being late, she finds some dangerous weapons in his bag, but she doesn't comment on them yet. Driss' work today is to drive Philippe around, but he refuses to put him in the back of a van as if he was a cargo, so instead, he takes him on one of the fancy cars that don't seem much used. Philippe, who first thinks this isn't suitable and says they should be pragmatic, is soon getting excited at the idea of a faster, less boring ride, although Yvonne still disapproves this action. When they try to leave the building, there is a neighbor who parked at their entrance, ignoring the sign on the door that says it's forbidden. Driss did not hesitate to go after the guy, grabbing him by the neck of his shirt and threaten him until he moves the car. Philippe is impressed by his actions, but Yvonne once again disapproves these. The pair goes to a museum, where Philippe is planning to buy a piece of artwork and Driss considers it not worth the money because it's just a red splotch on the portrait. After that, Philippe meets with a relative of his, who tells him everyone is worried about Driss since he can be violent. He also discovered he has a criminal record, but Philippe doesn't give a damn. He appreciates Driss because he doesn't pity him and doesn't mind joking around with him. After another failed attempt at hitting on Magali, Driss is having a dinner with Yvonne in the kitchen while listening to Philippe dictate a letter to Magali, claiming it's a private conversation. Yvonne turns off the baby monitor and proceeds to explain what's going on. Philippe is pen pals with a woman called Eleanor. Those are the letters he didn't let Driss open. But he has never met Eleanor in person. Their relationship is purely epistolary. Speaking of love, Driss teases Yvonne for the looks the gardener gives her all the time before going to bed. He's trying to sleep when he hears some weird sounds coming from the baby monitor. That is Philippe having trouble breathing. Not being able to ignore him even if he tries, Driss goes to his room and tenderly guides him through the attack, with comforting words and a wet fabric to wipe his face. Philippe eventually falls asleep, only to wakes up again a moment later, saying he needs air. This time Driss doesn't shilly-shally. He puts Philippe on the wheelchair, covers him with blankets, and takes him out for a stroll by the riverside. This is the first time Philippe has seen Paris at night in a long time, and now he's more relaxed. He explains to Driss that the medicine can only do so much and he sometimes experiences phantom pains. When they see some girls walking by, Philippe also confesses he isn't capable of pleasuring a woman because of his situation, but he still can enjoy some satisfaction when he gets his ears massaged because they are sensitive zones. When the phantom pain threatens to appear again, Driss shares one of his stories with Philippe, who is skeptical at first but ends up loving it. After which they go to a restaurant, where they joke around while sharing a meal, and Philippe decides to share more of his story. That he met his wife when they were both students, and shortly after they got married, she had 5 miscarriages and was diagnosed with an incurable terminal illness. That was why they adopted Eliza. Philippe has always loved competitions, extreme sports, and speed. It was during a paragliding session that bad weather caused him to crash and breaks his vertebrae, although he still thinks his real handicap isn't the chair but living without his wife. Philippe remembers the date and realizes Driss has passed his 1-month trial, so he's now formally hired. But he needs to start by bringing back the Feyberge egg he stole because it was a gift from his wife. She would give him one every year, and he has exactly 25, matching their time together. The next day, Driss goes to talk to Mina when she's leaving school, who is a bit offended because he hasn't been answering her messages except to ask her to look for the egg. She also tells him about some cops that have been calling their home. Subsequently, he visits Adama, who confesses he was found with 30 grams on him. Driss wants to take him to lunch, but Adama refuses and instead gets in the same suspicious car from before. Later on, Driss is permitted to be present while Philippe dictates his letter for Eleanor to Magali. He thinks this purple prose is very boring and that Philippe should be more direct. He's also puzzled to hear that this has been going on for 6 months and they never exchanged pictures. When he finds her phone number on one of the letters, he takes it as a sign and calls her, courteous Philippe to take the phone and finally speak to her outside the epistle written word. Their conversation went so well that Philippe is now always on the phone with her, even right before he and Driss attend the opera, during which Driss laughs and makes fun of the costumes. The next day, Driss convinces Philippe to accept to exchange pictures with Eleanor and chooses one of him that's in the wheelchair. While he's painting, Eliza, his boss daughter, burst into his room to ask him for a cigarette and makes fun of him for trying to be artistic. Getting angry, he kicks her out before going to see Philippe, who is currently asking Yvonne to change the chosen picture for one of him when he wasn't quadriplegic. She hides the picture inside the escort file right before Driss burst in, complaining about Eliza and telling Philippe he needs to discipline her daughter. This is one thing Yvonne agrees with Driss. Philippe agrees to talk to Eliza, but is mostly surprised when Driss lets it slip that he has been painting. Days continue to pass, and the friendship between Philippe and Driss continues to grow. Driss takes him to play in the snow and brings him with him when he goes out for a run. Philippe gets him his first suit and scolds his daughter while Driss listens to him through the baby monitor. When Driss finishes his first painting, he shows it to Magali, who slaps him when he tries to kiss her. Philippe, however, likes the painting and promises he'll try to sell it. The two of them have a great time with each other, enjoying things like getting a faster car, sharing stories, and even hiring escorts together. When Philippe's birthday comes, he isn't very excited about it. Every year, he pretends to be surprised that they are throwing a party and has to meet with all these relatives that only come to see him on the date to check if he's still alive. Philippe says it'll all be rather boring. While he and the guests enjoy some live classical music, Driss searches for Eliza, who is crying in her room after taking some of Yvonne's pills, which won't murder her as she expected. The reason why she is sad is because Bastien broke up with her and called her a tart, so she asks Driss to talk to the boy, which he accepts to do for a price. Meanwhile, Philippe is showing Driss's painting to his relative in the party and manages to convince him to buy it for €11,000. Driss goes back to the dining room and chats with Yvonne, who tells him Magali is in a relationship with someone named Fred, but things are rather rocky at the moment, giving Driss hope. As the party begins to die down, Philippe makes Driss listen to some of the most important songs in classical music history, but he can only joke in response. After the band is done, he brings his iPod and plays Boogie Wonderland by Earth before he starts dancing right in the middle of the floor. He's an incredible dancer and the rest of the party join him and dance with him, which Philippe enjoys watching. Later, when putting Philippe to bed, Driss opens Eleanor's most recent letter to him. She has sent her picture, showing she's rather pretty, and is telling him they should meet next week when she visits Paris. When the day of the date comes, Yvonne and Driss put Philippe through dozens of outfits until they find the perfect one. And since it's Yvonne that will be taking Philippe to the date, Driss uses his day off to visit Bastien and threatens him until the boy accepts to apologize to Eliza and to bring her croissants every day. He also asks him to fix his hair. After that, he visits his mother at work, but only to watch her from afar. At the restaurant, Yvonne and Philippe are waiting for Eleanor, who is very late. After waiting for an hour, Philippe gives up, and Yvonne calls Driss to come take him home, without noticing Eleanor is arriving at the same time as they were leaving the restaurant. That same night, Philippe takes Driss with him in his private plane and gives him the money he got for selling the picture, making him massively happy. They make it to the countryside the next morning, and Philippe decides to go paragliding, dragging Driss with him as well. Driss doesn't want anything to do with this, but after initially freaking out, he ends up enjoying the experience. When they return home, Adama is there waiting for Driss and gets scolded when he sees the scars on his face. Adama will still not tell Driss what's happening in his life, so Driss makes him wait in his room while he calls Mina to tell her not to worry and goes to put Philippe to bed. Philippe, however, isn't sleepy yet. After making Driss look at a painting with him, he asks him about his family, which Driss at first doesn't want to talk about, but he eventually gives in. It turns out Adama technically isn't his brother and his parents aren't actually his real parents, they are his aunt and uncle. They fetched him from Senegal when he was 8 because they couldn't have kids, and his real name is Bakary Bassari, but because other kids had that name, they called him Idris, and that became Driss. One day, his aunt miraculously was able to conceive, and after his uncle died, there were other men and more kids as well. In the same way Driss had talked to him about Eliza, Philippe points out that Adama needs discipline, so he terminated Driss' job so he can be there with his family, because he can't spend his entire life taking care of a person who is paralyzed in both arms and legs. The next morning, after Bastien has brought his daily croissant while wearing a better hairdo, Driss packs his bags and gets ready to go. Magali comes to say her goodbyes, and when Driss tries to hit on her one last time, Magali introduces him to Fred, which is short for Frederic. Turns out Magali isn't interested in men, and Driss gives up on the spot. On his way out of the house, he gives the baby monitor back to Yvonne and teases her for having lied to him about Magali just to mess with him. In return, she gives him the escort file he had started, and he's disappointed to find the picture he had chosen is hidden there. Driss throws away the file, but he keeps the photograph for himself. Once outside, he finds a car once again blocking the entrance, so he asks him to move away even if he doesn't work there any longer. When Adama calls him out from it, Driss says is a matter of standard. A few hours later, the two brothers go pick up their mother at the station while his formal boss, Philippe, is having his first dinner together with the new caretaker, who is stuffy and boring, and Philippe decides to leave him without even having a bite. Since Yvonne is out on a date with the gardener, nobody is there to scold him for it. As days passes, Driss goes back to his old life. He hangs out with his old friends again and tells the guys from the suspicious car not to bother Adama anymore. When he goes to an interview that he doesn't have enough experience for, he manages to win over the employer by calling himself pragmatic, concerning with practical matters and using all the art knowledge he acquired while working for Philippe. This lands him a job as a driver. Philippe continues to dislike his new caretaker and is in a constant bad mood. One night, he refuses anyone in the house to help him with his phantom pain, so Yvonne calls Driss and asks him to come over. That's how they find themselves in the situation from the beginning, with the cops chasing after them first and escorting them to the hospital later. After that little adventure, Driss drives Philippe to the coast, and the sight of the sea helps Philippe calm down. Sometime later, Driss takes care of Philippe's overgrown beard before taking him to a restaurant for lunch, but he doesn't stay, because someone else will be making Philippe company today. Driss wishes him luck and finally gives him back his egg before leaving, and Philippe starts worrying about being alone until he sees who his date is. Behold, it was Eleanor, who is also delighted to see him and doesn't mind the wheelchair at all. This is a true story event. Please make sure to like and subscribe for more interesting movies recaps like this. The real Count Philippe Pozzo di Borgo now lives in Morocco. He has remarried and has 2 daughters. The real Driss, actually called Abdel Yasmin Sellou, has his own firm and is also married with 3 children. The 2 men continue to be very close friends till this day. Thanks for watching. Please hit the thumbs up like button, smash the red subscribe button for more recaps, leave your thoughts about this movie in the comment section below. Peace.